Welcome to the naming of Bernstein Hall. I'm Leslie Cushing. As many of you know, this card is true and not true. I will be speaking with you, but not until lunchtime. So right now, my only function is to welcome you, to say it's really great to have everyone here, and to hand the podium to my dear leader, our dear leader, Brian W. Casey, president of Colgate.
Well, good morning. It's appropriate that we start today by giving thanks for this nearly completed building. Thanks to the architects and builders, to Jason Miner and Steve Hughes, who managed the project, to Leslie Cushing and Lynn Schwartzer and Mary Simonson, and so many faculty members who dreamed up and plotted out the dynamics of every room, indeed every hallway, to make this nearly completed building a laboratory of thinking and learning, a place where intellectual and creative serendipity, which has to remain unplanned, will surely happen. Colgate will offer more thanks when this nearly completed building is in fact formally completed, when students and faculty and staff walk into this new place and get to work. Can you imagine that first years at Colgate next fall will never know of this campus without this building? They'll never know that there once was this ill-defined space between an anchored old student union building and a brutalist art center. They'll never know there was a time when our campus maps did not have the name Bernstein. They may never know that we gathered to rename a soon-to-be completed building. This is a rare moment in this old university's history. We gather today to take note. Naming rituals are prevalent across all cultures and societies. Some are religious, some are not. Typical gestures in naming rituals are the reading of poems, the laying of hands, the pouring of water, and my favorite, the planting of trees. Music is common in these rituals, so is prayer. They vary by region and faiths. All naming rituals, however, involve some form of storytelling, the recalling of moments that led to the day of the ceremony. Renaming ceremonies are rarer still. They come at pivotal moments, not typically when things are new, but when things or circumstances have changed. When a young person has moved into maturity, when a history of a place is reconsidered, when events have altered how we see things. Renaming ceremonies don't merely announce a change in that which is being named, but a change in those who are doing the naming. To name something is, in fact, the first act of creation. To rename something comes from a deeper place, and it always involves longer stories. So on this day of renaming, I offer 3 moments, 3 stories with Dan, the person to whom thanks is most due today. The first moment. I'm sitting at my desk in West Hall in quarantine during the pandemic. I'm trying to see if I can touch the bed and the desk at the same time. Stretching out of my office chair, I find out that I can, and I'm immediately depressed over this triumph. The phone rings, and it's Dan. I am grumpy, and I'm hot, and I'm not sleeping. But I answer, of course. In response to his asking how I am, I just growl. He tells me, though, that my day is about to become better. He was telling me that he was going to give Colgate a transformative gift to make this first building and what we were just beginning to think of as the middle campus, another renaming, possible. He was going to make the Center for Technology and Innovation happen with his remarkable gift. I didn't quite know what I was going to say because I was actually just sitting there waiting for Paul McLaughlin to give me the day's test result numbers. And I was wondering whether Colgate was actually going to stay open that year or even that week. But Dan was saying the university was about to get better, more complex, more interesting, more creative, more substantial. I rolled my desk over to the bed. I lied down on the bed, and I think the world is too much that day. There are too many emotions for anyone to understand what's happening. In a dark time, Colgate's middle campus had suddenly begun. Another moment. I'm sitting with Dan in Alice Nakaminsky's Benton Scholar Seminar, Russia and Ukraine, Then and Now, where we're discussing Vasily Grossman's Life and Fate, a tragic story of Germany and Russia during World War II and the siege of Stalingrad. Dan has clearly and impressively read the nearly 900-page, extraordinarily difficult novel that has been assigned, and he wants to jump into the discussion. Professor Nakaminsky is now walking us through some of the most harrowing sections of the novel, including scenes of the Holocaust and vivid and heartbreaking moments in Nazi death camps. We're then discussing the very end of the novel, and Alice is asking the class whether the novel offers a moment of hope in the last pages, a glimmer to suggest that there's a possibility for human redemption, despite what we or the characters have witnessed. The final chapter of Life and Faith is populated with anonymous and new characters. We had not seen them before, and they remain nameless throughout the end of the book. And they are all stumbling through the tragedy of the war as it's ending, desperately clinging to their humanity. One of these characters is a soldier, returning from the German occupation of Stalingrad. He's with his wife and his young daughter, and they, exhausted, are beginning to walk slowly into the Russian countryside. We do not know what they have seen or where they're heading, but they're walking. Is there redemption in this moment? The students aren't sure, though I believe Alice thinks there is this possibility, though it's faint. The students are still exhausted by the brutality of the novel. The class ends, and Dan and I walk out of the class. Dan, usually talkative, does not say a word to me. The third moment. I'm in an overplanted courtyard of a hotel in Palm Beach, Florida, drinking a remarkably expensive cappuccino. I've been away from the campus for days, which always makes me anxious. I'm scrolling through my emails while hotel jazz washes over me, and I'm making my way through this overpriced coffee. As I look through my emails, I see that Dan has emailed me, asking that I call him right away. Of course I do. He's worried about the building and how the windows on the east side of the third floor do or don't relate to the windows that will surround the north entrance of the building. After countless meetings with architects on many projects, including Benton Hall, I think, my God, he's fretting over windows. I've ruined Dan Benton by placing on my own propensity for design anxiety. But I realize he wants this building to be right. He wants it to be perfect. My phone to my ear, laptop open to the building plans. We talk and talk and talk about the windows. These are just 3 of the stories that are already part of this building. And now, for decades and decades, centuries maybe, students will come to this building. And they will walk through an entranceway where carved above the door, a final detail, will be the name Bernstein. And they will probably not know that this building was once going to have one name, but it was given a different name, an older one. And they won't perhaps know it, but they might sense as they enter the building to create and to play and to think that carved into the stone above the door isn't just a name, but a message that says, yes, yes, there's a chance that stories can change, that redemption is possible, and that a quiet bravery can alter campus maps and buildings and how we see the world. And the story, our story, goes on and on. And despite pandemics and wars, we wait always for rare moments of beauty, for those times when we transcend history and circumstance, which is this moment today. And that, Dan, my friend, is what you have done and what you've given to all of us. So on behalf of this old university, in ways that I can only try to express, but surely won't get fully right, thank you and thank you. This building is perfect. Thank you, Dan.
Brian, thank you for those kind words. I never get tired of hearing them. I'm taller than you.
I'm younger than you.
I want to thank all of you for being here. Wow, this mic really works. Fellow trustees, administrators, students. We have students. They're not up on the hill getting ready for the protest. Thank you to my friends, my family, those of you who came to Hamilton just for this. I really do appreciate the trip. Thank you to the faculty that will energize this building. A special thank you to a few professors who have made my recent Colgate experience so great. Tim Burns, where are you? The Benton Scholars academic founder, and Karen Harp, the Benton Scholars, who's under whose leadership the Bentons flourished. Tim's philosophy, better to beg for forgiveness than ask for permission, and Karen's drive fast, take chances, imbue the spirit of the Benton program today. Hello to Mary Simonson. Hi. The Benton Endowed Chair in Arts, Creativity, and Innovation, and Alice Nakimovsky, who Brian has already introduced, and I'll have more to say there. Today we are here to rededicate this amazing new building, and we're actually sitting in it. We're not in the parking lot. We're not digging a hole. It's beautiful. The sound is just great. Congratulations to the architects, the builders, the campus team, Steve Hughes, JS. You brought this building in on time, on budget, mostly, on time, and on time. Renaming this building wasn't easy, at least not at first. It came after a long period of self-reflection and ruminating and fretting. I know, honey, I do that. It's the detail thing. I'm humbled by the support I've received from my fellow trustees as I made this decision. A special thank you to President Casey and to Dean Cushing and my wife, Stephanie March, whose advice and wisdom encouraged me to take this step. Bernstein Hall is a cornerstone of the Middle Campus Initiative for Arts, Innovation, and Creativity, a vital part of Colgate's third century plan. As an advocate for the liberal arts, I'm proud to sponsor this initiative. It really resonates strongly with my personal interests. I'm an art collector, a movie streamer, a theater goer, a music listener. And my investing career has focused on the companies that create innovations that transform our lives and our livelihoods, sometimes for the better and sometimes not. The Middle Campus Initiative brings together these disciplines: computer science, visual arts and art history, performing arts, film and media studies, and entrepreneurship into a single area on campus. Arts, creativity, and innovation all in one place. I'm a big believer in collisions and serendipity. And I hope this will encourage a mix of ideas that emphasize the value of a liberal arts education. As Steve Jobs said, ha ha ha, you guys can all do this by heart now, can't you? Technology alone is not enough. It's technology married with the liberal arts, married with the humanities, that yields the results that make our hearts sing. So that's the Third Century Plan Initiative, and that's the building. But what about the name? Naming this building has been a personal journey. I originally decided to call it the Benton Center for Creativity and Innovation, even though Colgate already has a Benton Hall, because why not? But just before the name was literally carved in stone, the Middle East and campuses blew up across the country. First, let me give you a little story on the Bernstein name. As the leaders of the Hebrew Immigrant Aid Society, or HIAS, my great-grandfather, James Bernstein, and his brother John, really it was John, rescued 250,000 people from Nazi persecution before and during World War II. After the war, HIAS helped close displaced persons camp in Europe and resettled roughly 150,000 refugees to the US, Canada, Australia, South America, and eventually Israel. Initially, the highest mission was to assist fellow Jews based on religious duty and community service, solidarity. Today, it has transformed into a global humanitarian group. HIAS aids people of all faiths and backgrounds worldwide who have been forced to flee their homes, including Gaza. And yet, despite this proud heritage, my grandfather, Sidney Bernstein, changed our name to Benton in the early 1940s. Why? Quotas. Because he didn't want his kids to have the name Bernstein on their high school transcripts. Initiated by Harvard, In 1922, elite universities, including Columbia, Yale, Cornell, and Penn, instituted quotas to solve what they called the Jewish problem, i.e., there were too many Jews on campus in the years leading up to and following World War I. I visited Colgate last April to attend said Benton Scholars Seminar led by Professor Nakomofsky. And after class, I went back to Leslie's office, raving about how inspired I was by listening to Alice and the students. It was really terrific. Leslie gave me a book that Professor Nakomofsky had edited. It's called Repression, Reinvention, and Rugala, A History of Jews at Colgate, which features 6 essays written by Colgate students. I believe we have a Colgate student back there who was part of the process. As many of you know, Colgate's history is marred by the presidency of George Cutton, a eugenicist who served under board chairman James C. Colgate. From 1922 to 1942. Thank you, President Casey, for removing Cutton's name from what is now 113 Broad Street. Cutton implemented the same racist and anti-Semitic quotas as those that inspired my grandfather to change our name. 1 to 2 Jews per year and 0 black students were admitted to Colgate from 1926 to 1942. These policies continued under President Everett Needham Case until they were outlawed by the state in 1948. So here we are in Bernstein Hall, next to James C. Colgate Hall, across the lawn from Case Library, in sight of the housing complex formerly known as Cutton. Happily, this building's taller. Last year, during college visits with my daughter, Kat, I was struck by the number of Jewish last names on academic buildings across the country, from NYU to USC. Tisch, Steinhardt, Kaufman, Kimmel, Annenberg, Browd, Newhouse, but nothing at Colgate. I began to consider the significance of naming rights. They're not just a form of recognition, they're one of representation as well. Yet despite of all this, I stuck with the Benton Center. Even though there's always so much Benton here at Colgate, I simply wasn't ready to publicize my heritage as an ethnic but secular Jew. And then on October 7th, Hamas attacked Israel. When horrible things happen, we look to our leaders for guidance and understanding. More than 1,200 innocent Israelis killed by the terrorist group Hamas. Scores of innocents taken hostage. Children slaughtered, babies slaughtered, entire families massacred. Rapes, beheadings, bodies burned alive. Hamas unleashed atrocities that recall the worst ravages of ISIS, unleashing pure, unadulterated evil upon the world. I didn't make up these words. President Biden spoke them. When horrible things happen, we look to our leaders for guidance and understanding. So what did our leading universities do? They vacillated. They issued statements lamenting the violence on both sides. Others cited the Chicago principles, asserting their school commitment to freedom of expression doesn't permit them to take a stand. Anti-Semitic demonstrations were unleashed in major cities and on college campuses, but many students and professors didn't equivocate at all. They didn't condemn Hamas. Instead, they chanted from the river to the sea. At Harvard, 33 student groups issued a statement that they, quote, hold the Israeli regime entirely responsible for all unfolding violence. At Columbia, more than 100 professors called the attack a military response by a people who had endured crushing and unrelenting state power. And recently, a Columbia protest leader proclaimed, Zionists don't deserve to live. And now, of course, students, professors, and outside agitators are clashing with the police as they set up encampments and occupy buildings. Jewish benefactors and Congress were outraged. They noted the distinction between hate speech and free speech seems awfully murky when we're talking about Jews. Presidents lost their jobs, not here. Philanthropy dropped, not here. What have we done? What have we taught that so many view Israel and Jews as colonial oppressors, rather than a people that has faced hate, condemnation, and genocide for decades, centuries, millennia. As a university trustee for nearly 25 years, I feel responsible. It's happening on my watch. It's time for a new conversation, an honest one about the tension between inclusion and prejudice, free speech and harassment. I am so proud of Colgate. We're having that conversation here. Colgate's response has been compassionate and intelligent. Jewish students feel safe living and learning in an inclusive community where multiple cultures flourish. As Colgate's leading donor, I am dedicated to working with, rather than against, President Casey, Dean Cushing, Dean McLaughlin, Vice President Renee Madison, and my fellow trustees. My goal is for Colgate to set an example for other universities by showing how freedom of expression can complement and enhance a diverse and inclusive community. By naming this building Bernstein Hall, it looks good. I celebrate my family's heritage. I pay tribute to the strength and perseverance of the Jewish people. And just as the combination of the arts, entrepreneurship, and computer science has amazing possibilities, so does the combination of diverse perspectives, skills, and backgrounds in a student body. It enhances everything. And with both at work, we fulfill our mission to equip our students to face the challenges of the world they will enter. Isn't that the role of the liberal arts? Doesn't that make your heart sing? Thank you.